Here we are. Mama. Mama, mama, mama. If you're here and you're a little like mama'd out already, just take a breath. You're safe. I usually don't touch mama with a 10-foot pole on Mother's Day. I'm not so much of like a holiday sermon giver, you know? Like Hallmark holiday sermon giver and stuff like that. But mama came in for me too. So somehow we need mama today. You breathe into that with me? You belong. Right where you are, as you are, who you are, you belong. And this is the gift of the divine. We might call it the divine feminine. We might call it mothering. That sense of belonging, that deep sense of belonging that is truly oneness. The way that is felt and expressed for the first time on this planet in this expression in our form is through that bond and connection with Mother. That sense of having one body. My mom used to explain to me that in her mind, for a child, their experience with their parents or with their mother is their first experience of God. And she would go into that and explain what she meant by that. Now that's hard news for a lot of people. But if you didn't have an experience of God through your earthly parents, you probably know what that means. And you've probably felt in life like you're walking uphill to grab that connection, to feel that. That first experience of divine mother, of the feminine aspect of God, is that experience that shows us that we're born in original blessing, not born in original sin. We've all had the experience that when we've seen a child, when we've beheld a baby, it's so clear that we're born in original blessing. It's clear, and it's clear beyond religion, and it's clear beyond our education, and it's clear beyond our upbringing. In fact, sometimes that is the experience that heals someone from their original trauma, their original wounds. And in fact, if anything is the original sin, that, friends, is the original sin. The original sin is someone beholding you as anything unlike a child of the divine. Anything unlike God in expression, anything like the light giving itself to form. And we can spend a lifetime trying to recover from that original fall. We can spend a lifetime trying to grasp, pull in, fill that void. And at some point for each of us on the spiritual journey, we awaken to that realization and we take it on consciously. We recognize that in fact there's nothing wrong with it, that there is an opportunity in it, and that no one comes onto this planet Earth without some aspect of that opportunity showing itself. We all have our own stories, we all have our ways of waking up, but this is part of the spiritual journey, this is part of the spiritual path. Richard Rohr, one of my favorite contemplatives of today and favorite authors, said it like this. He said, he's a Catholic, a Franciscan. He said, mothers give us a primal experience of life as union. And if you need to for today, substitute the word mother for mothering or divine feminine. Mothers give us a primal experience of life as union. He said, my mother's eyes tell me that I am the beloved. My mother's eyes tell me that I am the beloved. He also refers to prayer in another space, and he said prayer is with someone else is seeing the beloved in someone else and having that be seen in you. So there is a fall from the garden when we don't have that experience. When we don't feel we have been seen in that way, when we haven't had that original experience of primal union. He said that's what a great gift, a good father, a good mother and father are. They enable us, he says, to know ourselves at a depth that cannot be shaken. To know ourselves at a depth that cannot be shaken. He says true spirituality is always bringing us back to this original knowing that is a unitive experience. The whole of this experience, if not fully internalized, can end up as a deep longing, a deep void, a deep sense of not belonging, or that there's something wrong, or something has to be fixed, or somehow I don't fit in here, or somehow this moment is not enough and not okay. He says, mothers give us that primal experience of life as union. My mother's eyes tell me I am the beloved. But when I begin to see myself through eyes that compare, judge, and dismiss, then the division begins, and conscious spirituality is needed. The division has to happen, he says. We have to leave the garden. We can't stay there, letting mother gaze at us forever. So don't look for anyone to blame or say to any group, you took me out of the garden. The whole Bible is written outside the garden. It is only important that you have a garden to remember. It is only important that you have a garden to remember. So, the human condition, the reality, is that some of us never had it, right? If you never had it, you are seen. If you never had it, you belong. If you never had it, I'm so sorry. Some of us had it and didn't know it was God. So we isolated it to a particular form, to a particular being on this planet Earth that we called Mother. And maybe when Mother lifted off into her freedom form, maybe when she passed, or maybe when human circumstances came in and the ego came in and separation came in and it got too crunchy or you got older and things just got funky, maybe you thought it left. Because we didn't realize that that was God expressing in and through an as. And we thought that was the only package it came in. And then it disappeared. Some had it, have it, and it's glorious. But the human condition is one that when we see something, when we have something, we want it more. And so we go through life seeking a replica of that experience. It's got to be out there. Someone give it to me, because the experience of it being out there can be beautiful, but it can also be torture if we don't know it's in here. And if we don't know its true nature and its true source is God. And some had it, but it didn't come through Mother. So they're still walking in the void, carrying around a story that they missed out. Because they thought it was supposed to come in a particular package or a particular gender at a particular time in life. And it's so hard to take off those glasses, to take that away and to see where that divine energy is coming into your life, into my life. To see how the presence is still active, still at work. Even if the human package, the human expectation may have failed us. All of these experiences have different spiritual ways to address them, but nonetheless, they're all about a fall. So the core experience in the human condition that we're all recovering from or healing from is the original knowing, or the original sin, the original missing the mark, the original fall. Not knowing our wholeness, not knowing ourselves as beloveds, not being held as a beloved, not being seen for what we are, which the master teacher told us is the light of the world. So we're here healing core wounds. Maybe the fall is both seeing duality as we teach in unity. We teach the garden is waking up and seeing duality, seeing black and white, good and bad, highs and lows, hate and love, fear and faith. But maybe it's more than seeing duality. Maybe it's the buildup of initial experiences that expel us from the garden, from that mother's gaze, from the idea that it exists for us. People try to get it through religion, but religion doesn't give it. The contemplative path gives it. The contemplative practice gives it. Spirituality gives it. Meditation and prayer give it. And it's given through grace. Through the moment that we wake up and we see it either in ourselves, in our world, or in someone else. And once it is truly seen, we cannot unsee it. Once it's truly seen, we can't unsee it. We can trick ourselves that it's not here and go through life longing for it and avoid, but that's just the human condition. The key is to recognize that it is available and it is accessible and it is inexhaustible in every moment it is given. It is the gift through which and in which we are born. It's the deep sense of wholeness that can't be taken away. Some call it a state of bliss, some call it a state of awakening. For some of us, it's a moment. For some of us, it's an experience in a lifetime. But metaphysically, in the Garden of Eden, sin is missing the mark. Sin is the fall. Sin is eating of the illusion that we are not wondrously made. That's the error. The error is believing and then acting like we are not wondrously made. We're born into a world, into an existence that seems to be much better at beholding the error in each other than beholding the divine. Than beholding the archery term, the sin, the missing the mark. Than beholding the Christ or the awakened presence. But the beloved is seen in you. Once you see the beloved in yourself, in others, you truly cannot unsee it. You can see our actions. You can see your own experience. You can see all of the missing the mark. But we are lifted out of duality into wholeness. And why I say it takes a contemplative practice instead of religion is because it is confusing. It is confusing to be able to see actions of error, actions of harm, actions of discord, actions of what we may even be tempted to call evil, and still know the truth. Because how can I change it all? How can I fix it all? How can I heal it all if I'm not angry about it? If I don't carry around a story, if I don't work at it, if I don't hammer away. All healing comes through love. All true healing comes through love. All true healing comes from a sense of wholeness. All true healing comes through wonder. In Psalm 139, David was praying to God and said, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, translation for the word fearfully is awe. I am made in wonder and awe. And if someone didn't see that in me, if I keep failing to see that in myself, that's a mistake. It's a missing the mark. But what a mistake and missing the mark is simply an invitation. Because God as grace is the harmonizing faculty. God as grace as that activity of spirit, activity of the source that takes every now moment, every now thing, and keeps bringing it together for the highest to unfold. Keeps bringing it together for wholeness to be seen. So it doesn't matter so much the details, the circumstances, the missing, the marks. It doesn't matter so much all of those things because we stand in the present moment, and when we release the past, there is a divine opportunity, and it is the now moment. And in that moment, wholeness is inexhaustible, and it is right here. But so often, we turn away and we walk away from it. Maybe thinking we don't deserve it, maybe thinking it wasn't given to us in the right package. And we experienced the fall in the garden. We saw it. We can't unsee that. We saw the error. We see it. We see the separation and we look through it. We see what we're looking at. We look at each other. We look at ourselves rather than to God. The grand overall design. Grace in action. The divine wholeness expressing in and through and as each one of us. But the spiritual truth is source is always there. God is always there. So maybe another Trinity. I grew up Catholic, so I like the Trinity. Maybe another Trinity in awakening the Christ that the master teacher taught, that saints and sages throughout time taught, that the Buddha brought. Maybe another Trinity is that to awaken, we need to be beheld, that the light needs to be beheld in you, that's one piece of it. Someone seeing the light in you, having that original experience, that it's never too late to have. Some people have it on their supposed deathbed, which we know is a life bed. Someone beholding the sacred, the wonder in you. And maybe the second part of the Trinity is you finally being able to see it in yourself. Being willing to see it and experience it in ourselves. And the third aspect of the Trinity, to see it in others. And when I say see it in others, I don't mean because they're doing good. I don't mean because they just gave you something or they're shining like bright lights. I mean because you are down on your knees in the midst of knowing the human condition and you can see right through all of it and you still know who we are. And it's painful because it doesn't feel right to be on this planet and have that kind of love. We're supposed to separate. We're supposed to pull apart. We're supposed to tear at. That's what the human condition tells us. Tells us that's the only way to be safe. That's the only way to be protected. Push it away if you can't change it. Get it out. Expel it from the garden. But the true garden never went away, and it's not a space of duality. We may have seen each other in error, separation. We may have felt that. But the key is always looking to and through God's sight. Richard Rohr says, our culture teaches us that everything out there is hostile. Opposite of mothering. Opposite of the divine feminine. One of the reasons I think in Unity, so many people love Unity's expansive verbiage for godness, which there's no real such thing, because anytime you put the unlimited into words, you're going to limit it. But it's because we move through the paradigms that we label things with into new understanding. So for some people, their first time in Unity, thinking of God as at all feminine, heals. Oh, I can breathe into that a little bit. Richard Rohr says our culture teaches us that everything out there is hostile. What's the job of a mother when their infant comes to them? He says we have to compare, dominate, control, and ensure. In brief, we have to be in charge. That need to be in charge moves us deeper and deeper into a world of anxiety. Anxiety deepens, he goes on to say, and we begin to eliminate people from our lives if we can't control them. We eliminate the ones we can't fix, control, or see the divine image in. He goes on to say we become isolated selves, living the lie we believed to begin with. He points to the life that we often have and we experience where we are living in dissatisfaction. And he says, until we break the material world's hold on us and reestablish contact with reality, we will never be happy. And he leads us to the idea that that's not going to come from outer sources. It's not going to come even from religions. It's going to come from an inner practice, a contemplative path. A path that can take us past the road of black and white, good and bad, my way, your way or the highway, left and right, all of those divisions. That it's going to lead us past that, through that. Healing begins with seeing that even in the middle of error, even in the middle of missing the mark, God is good. You are good. Wholeness is here. That fall from the garden was about fallen sight. Nothing in the garden changed at all. They were standing in the same garden. What changed was their ability to perceive, was the ability to co-create, was the ability to have a deeper vision. Are we going to have garden eyes or fallen sight? That's our choice. The ego in the world of rules and laws and right and wrong is going to try to get us not to make mistakes, errors. It's going to give us fear, threats of damnation and hell. Abandonment, isolation, discord, division. But the contemplative path makes the way straight. It motivates us through love. They're different roads to the same intention, but one shows us a deep part of the path. That awakening comes through seeing the divine, beholding the divine. No one can argue with the truth that if we saw the divine in everyone so fully and completely, there would either be no error or we would stand in the midst of the error and be godness and call forth the godness with more than enough love, more than enough intelligence, more than enough spiritual resources to heal anything that may appear. So can we stand in the midst of anything, whatever we're looking at right now, whatever it is in your life, in my life, in this world, whatever it is that's here for us to heal today and to experience our original blessing, to experience our deep wholeness, can we stand in the middle of it? And maybe not call the mistake good, but know that good happens from mistakes. Maybe not call the error or the problem great and celebrate it, but go, I will see and bring the greatness from this error. Has anyone ever procrastinated so much that by the time you were done procrastinating, the task wasn't there anymore? And it's like, part of you is kind of like, that was a good mistake. We have a a baker in this community, and we were in a planning meeting for the 100-year anniversary, and she brought us snickerdoodles. And I used to have a girlfriend in college who had this grandmother that was a teaching for me on divine love and the divine feminine, and that grandmother would send the granddaughter snickerdoodles, and I called her the snickerdoodle grandma. I did not have snickerdoodle grandmas, and I could have used that to pain myself. I did quite a bit, and for a while in my life, I used that to pain myself. I'd call them snickerdoodle grandmas. I can't imagine having a snickerdoodle grandma. Anyway, snickerdoodles were made at this meeting, and she brought them in, and she started talking about the error in which they were made, because it was something like 2 1/4 cups of flour instead of what it was supposed to be, which 2 3/4 cups of flour. And I've had her snickerdoodles before, and they're good, but they weren't like grandma's snickerdoodles. These snickerdoodles were grandma's snickerdoodles. Like they had flattened to a degree that they had that chewy inside, that it was like a cookie, like no other cookie. You know what I'm talking about? Like I when I first had a snickerdoodle, I was like, what is this? I don't put anything in my mouth like that is not chocolate. And I was like, I will have another. But then I have searched the globe over and over, and aside from this grandmother, I can't find a snickerdoodle like that. Well, that mistake that she brought into the office, hands down, everyone at the table was like, that was a good mistake. Will we do that with our lives? The best news is that the garden didn't change. Those in the garden perceived it differently, saw it differently, acted differently. Richard Rohr said, as ego, we cope with the world. We change it, we rearrange, and constantly try to improve it. As contemplatives, we first stand in vigil. Then we act from that more spacious place. That's the place of divine love. We have a beloved that shared a story this week on her social media account. She was driving on the road, and as she was driving, and I'm sure I won't do this story credit, but you can check in with her after the service, especially if you're going to get a little necklace, because the divine sat her right behind me in this service today. And I said, ooh, I usually ask, but you posted it on social media, so I was just going to take your story. But it's really polite to ask first. So I leaned over and said, may I? Yes, you may. So if you want to get the real story, you can talk to Bethany after the service. But she was driving along the highway on the way to, or the road on the way to pick up her children from school. And any mother knows what that moment is like when you're getting ready to pick up your children from school, right? And all of a sudden, as the cars were driving, there was a truck ahead of her that went off the road, entirely off the road, and into the grass below, into the green, disappeared. And it happened so fast, she was clear that no one else had seen it but her, because it was in a split second and it just went down. And she pulled over her vehicle and got out and looked, and it was nowhere to be seen. Imagine that moment. Imagine that moment of, what do I do? And of course, she called for emergency help and tried to flag people down, but she took a breath, connected, and went with what was real, which was, you go in. This is your beloved. And she walked or ran down into those woods to the vehicle. Another person came by, another woman stopped as she was going down, so she was able to say what she needed to say, so there was another person getting help. And she stayed with him until his wife came. He was trying to call his wife on the phone, and she got the phone and helped make the call, and stayed until the wife came, and they had an embrace, and they had tears. That is divine love. It may not be that he would have died from that accident, but I have no doubt he needed to know, and his wife needed to know, you're not alone on this planet. You are seen. You are loved. You are family. You belong and you are not alone. And that's the original blessing, knowing that you are whole and holy and you are beheld as such. Radical grace, a friendly universe. That is mother love. Richard Rohr tells a story about Einstein. He says at the end of his life, Einstein, with all of his brilliance, think about all that Einstein expressed, wrote, and worked on, said, "Now I see that the only question is this universe friendly? I have begun to discover its physical meanings, but the question that haunts me is it friendly? Is the whole thing, this whole thing out there on our side or not? Is the universe hostile or benevolent? Is it radically okay or is it not?" The gift of true religion is that it parts the veil, returns us to the garden, and tells us our primal experience was trustworthy. It reassures us that we live in a benevolent universe and that it's on our side. The universe, it reassures us, is radical grace. God's grace is sufficient. Namaste.
Meditation song, yes. Breathing in, I listen. Breathing out, I smile. 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 Breathing out, I smile.
Breathing into this moment, we inhale and exhale, allowing ourselves to come so fully and completely into this healing moment, this moment of wholeness, knowing who and whose we are, knowing that core inside that cannot be taken away, cannot be shaken, cannot be rearranged or changed. returning to the garden, our true nature, the source of life itself, knowing that we don't need to stop or change or halt the human condition. We don't need to be perfect, error-free. We simply behold wholeness, allowing it to have its way within our being, allowing ourselves the grace of coming home in the silence. By the power of this practice, may all beings have freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know God as love and themselves as emanations of this love. May all beings know that we are born blessed and here to be a blessing. In gratitude for this life we've been given, and the time and the form we give this life. Namaste.